not from State Farm. That commercial probably ruined cactus for me, though. Good. What do you think, Harley? We good?
Yeah, we good.
We good? Cool. Yeah, so I'm Jake. I'm on staff with the traveling team, kind of like Jason was talking about. What we travel, or what we do is we travel around the country talking about God's heart for the world. And just missions in general. And so that's what I want to do tonight. But before we get too far into it, I just want to let you guys know a little bit about my story and who I am. I'm from Kansas. Fun fact, Kansas is actually voted the least scenic state in America, so not a lot going on in Kansas. I was actually in India this last summer, and my friends were like, dude, where are you from? I'm like, dude, I'm from Kansas. We're like, huh? And dude, like right after Texas, we're like, oh, you're from Texas. We're like, whatever. And so that's what I want to do. I want to tell you guys just about God's heart for the world. And so I grew up in Kansas. I was born and raised on a cattle ranch. Yeah, getting it. What's up? Born and raised on a cattle ranch. So at a very young age, my one dream was to be a real life cowboy. And so I started competing at our county rodeo, and at the age of 5, I won my first trophy. Yes, sir. But before you guys like have me sign any autographs or like get too impressed, the competition I was in was called walk and trot, where I literally rode my horse into the arena, and when the announcer said walk, I walked, and when he said trot, I trotted my horse. But as a 5-year-old, that like took all of mind and concentration and like everything that I had in me to do that with my horse. And so, and at the time, I didn't realize that they even gave out trophies. You know what I mean? Like, but when I walked out, man, they stuck a trophy in my hand, and I was all about it. I was like, took it to show and tell, and showing all my friends. They had like its own special shelf, like in my room, like baller status. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, a few years ago, I was cleaning out some stuff in my room, and I came across this trophy. And when my mom walked in, I was like, Mom, you remember like this trophy I won? Reliving the glory days, but you know what I mean? And she's like, honey, you know that trophy's fake, right? What? And so what she goes on to tell me that it was just an extra trophy that we got from our neighbors that they handed me as I walked out just to make me think I won. Oh. That's a sick thing to do to a 5-year-old, okay? Like, seriously, my world was devastated because up until that point, my whole life had been revolved around and living for this trophy like I thought I won. Like, I still have trust issues. Like, I don't even know from my parents. A way to tell me that, too, if they love me, I don't know. But it's a funny thing to watch a little kid get like super jazzed and like pumped about a fake trophy. But honestly, everyone is living for a trophy. Everyone has a purpose and a goal that they're living for, right? And so I just want to talk about, we got to ask ourselves, what trophy are we living for? Because the world is a trophy factory of fake trophies. My career, my joy, my comforts, a family. And so we got to realize if we are, man, living for something that's other than God's purpose for our lives, man, we're living for something that's in the end not going to be worth it. And so that's what we want to talk to you tonight. That from cover to cover, God's purpose in this book is that He wants to be known among the nations. That God would be glorified among the nations. That over 1,500 times throughout this book, He talks about the nations. And that this is not one book, or this is not 66 different books, but the Bible is one book with one theme. So does that sound good? We're going to walk from Genesis to Revelation in like 25 minutes. Is that cool with you guys? Well, on your pants, boys. We're going to fly. All right, so we're going to start in Genesis. We're going to start where God starts. But in Genesis 12, we meet a man named Abraham. But let me catch us up on what happens in the Genesis 1 through 11. Genesis 1, God creates man and woman. He creates Adam and Eve. And when He created Adam and Eve, it was good. And He gave them one command. The very first command given man was multiply and fill the earth. This is the first command given quite kind of funny is that the only command that we've kept since was like, honor your father and mother, be fruitful and multiply. I will take up my cross, yes, Lord. You guys can discuss what that means after the meeting. But He repeats the same command to Noah when he comes off the ark in chapter 9. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. God's purpose in this command is that he desires, and he will get worshipers of him all around the earth, among all nations. And so in chapter 11, we find man that have come together and they're building a tower. And they say, let's come together, let's build this tower and make a name for ourselves and not be scattered across the face of the earth. This is blatant disobedience. And that's the scene that we're at when we find God, or we find chapter 12 when we meet Abraham, when God says, I'm going to bless that guy. Because right now, there is people scattered across the earth with different languages, different religions, different cultures, but God desires to be known among the nations. And so here we meet Abraham. And now the Bible is very explicit that Abraham did not deserve to be chosen by God. But God chose him only out of grace. And so here we are. The Lord said to Abraham, leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. Basically, God's saying, Abraham, leave everything you know, everything that's comfortable in your family, and he doesn't tell him where to go. That's kind of rude. You know what I mean? Like what? And so the reason God is not telling him where to go is because God desires Abraham to respond to a person and not a place. And the same thing he desires for us. But he goes on, he says, Abraham, I'm not out to ruin your life. I'm actually out to hook you up. He says, I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great. You will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. The best, the awesome, the greatest blessing we have from God is salvation. And that we get to have a relationship with the maker of the universe. How awesome is that? But it goes on, because that's the promise. But now here's the plan. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. God created in a way that the recipient of grace, the recipient of blessing, is never intended to be the final destination. God gives grace freely because it's on its way to somebody else. And that's what God is doing when he's setting up this promise and plan to Abraham. And when Abraham hears the plan, his response is simple. He obeys. He doesn't object. He doesn't question. He doesn't hesitate. He obeys. And so that's what I kind of want to show you guys, is that throughout the rest of the Bible, God's plan works out. Is this cool? This is good stuff? And so this promise is not for Abraham only, but for his whole family. In Genesis 26, his son Isaac, I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars, and through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed. Same thing through his grandson Jacob. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. And so, I just love this, how God created family. One of my friends, actually, at the University of Arkansas, got to take home a Japanese international student named Shota for Thanksgiving. And so him and Shota roll back for Thanksgiving, and over Thanksgiving, his family falls in love with Shota. So much so that they invite Shota back over a Christmas break, even though my friend wasn't going to be home. So Shota rolls back to this small town, and he's just like living it up. He's like sleeping in his room, he's wearing his clothes, and he becomes the reigning Xbox champion of the household, you know what I mean? And so my friend half expected Shota to, and there we go, half expected Shota to replace him as a member of the family, like come home and he finds a family portrait and like he's airbrushed out and like Shota's stuck in there. And so, but as his family began to welcome Shota in, Shota began to feel like a genuine member of the family. And as Shota began to feel as a genuine member of the family, he began to get this small feeling of responsibility. See, Shota understood what most Christians don't, is that it's not enough just to sit back and take upon all the blessings and not take on some of the responsibility. So on his own initiative, Shota started doing the laundry, washing the dishes, watching the dog, taking out the trash, because he knew that a true family member doesn't just sit back and take on the take on the blessings and not get involved in the responsibility. And so that's what I want to show you. That's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at some of the most famous verses in all the Bible and show you that God is blessing Abraham and his family to be a blessing to the nations. David and Goliath. Anybody heard of this one? One or two of you? Okay, good. I always thought the story of David and Goliath was like about us and about me. Like if I could just trust in God enough, if I could just believe in God enough, I could knock out any giant in my life. And that's partially true. But I want to show you that David understood that God's blessing was bigger than him. This is what he says to Goliath. David said, "And this day I will strike you down, Goliath, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel." See, David understood that the purpose was bigger than him, was bigger than even Goliath, that it was for the nations to know God. Rakshak and Benny, you guys know these guys, right? And so these are the guys that wouldn't bow down to the statue that King Nebuchadnezzar built. So he had them tossed into the fiery furnace. And God blesses them and protects them. And they walk out of that furnace without even the smell of smoke on their clothes. And the major Gentile king, King Nebuchadnezzar, praises God. And he says, I want to write a letter. So he gathers all of his scribes around. He said, I want to write a letter. And he says, I want to tell the people that there is no God who can save like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's God. No God can save like them. And the scribe's like, well, who do you want to write it to? To all the peoples, nations, and languages that dwell on the earth. Only everybody. Did God want to bless David and the three amigos? Absolutely. But see, the blessing was not intended just for them. It was so that God would be worshipped among the nations. That the only true God would be known among the nations. Same with the Ten Commandments. And so, I always thought Ten Commandments were like rules for us to follow. Like God could have structure and order on earth, and He could bless us kind of accordingly. We get 7 out of 10, maybe 8 out of 10, 6 out of 10. But God's purpose with the Great Commandment, or the Ten Commandments, is more than just ourselves. See, this is what Moses says. See, I have taught you decrees and laws the Lord my God commanded me. Observe them carefully, for this will show your wisdom and understanding to the nations. God gave us the Ten Commandments so that we would look different than the nations. So that when the nations look at His people, they would worship God because of the laws and decrees that they follow. I saw a great example of this. I have some friends that got to lead a Saudi Arabian international student of Christ. You know how rare that is? It took 7 years from the first time he heard the gospel until he started following Christ. And you know what the first day? The first day he heard the gospel? September 11th, 2001. He is a Middle Eastern college student studying in America when the planes hit the towers. You want to bet he was nervous? And his Christian neighbors walk over to his house. They knock on his door. And they say, hey, we love you. We care for you. If you need us to do anything, we'll do it. If you need us to run to the grocery store, we'll go. They share the gospel with him and pray for him. And 7 years later, he starts to follow Christ. Our personal holiness matters. Because the nations, the world, they don't need a better sermon on Christianity. It needs a better representation of it. That's what the Ten Commandments are about. Same with the rest of the Old Testament. The Exodus and Pharaoh, crossing the Jordan, the dedication of the temple. Why? So that all nations would know the one true God. Solomon's wisdom, Daniel and Lion's Den. Why? Is that God would be known throughout the earth. These are not isolated incidents. God's plan from the beginning was that the nations would know Him. It's the same in Psalms. Psalm 67. May God be gracious to us and bless us and cause His face to shine upon us. Anybody else like that one? I do. Yeah? Well, why? Why bless us? Why cause His face to shine upon us? That your ways may be known on the earth, your salvation among all nations. God has blessed us to be a blessing to the nations. A guy named Matthew Emmons. He's an American competition rifle shooter. In 2004, he was on the Olympic team, and during competition, he was killing it, so to speak. He was one shot away from gold medal. And he was so far ahead that all he had to do on this next shot was hit the target, and he would win gold. So what Matthew Emmons does is he engages the target, takes off the safety, he fires, bullseye. There's one problem, because the buzzer that represents a bullseye didn't go off. And see, up until that point, everyone in the crowd and Matthew Emmons didn't realize that he honed in on the wrong target. And in one shot, he went from 1st to 8th place. He had the gold medal in the bag, but because he focused on the wrong target, it was all for naught. And it's funny because how often do we do that? We're like, we get all ready and set, and we're focusing our lives and our trajectory of our lives on a target, but suddenly we become the center. Our career, our major, our marriage. And it becomes more about us than it does about God being known among the nations. And we line up and we shoot one lane over, like Matthew Emmons. And so, guys, even though Matthew Emmons didn't know his target at the time, and sometimes we as Christians may not fully understand the target that we're shooting at, God does. God has given us an incredible example and model to allow us to model our lives after. Jesus is our target. Because Jesus' life was the Great Commission. 2/3 of his ministry while he was living on earth was to the Gentiles, the internationals of his time. But if you want to see the best place to see God's heart for the world, is to go straight to the cross. And the most famous verse in all the Bible, John 3:16, sums it up best. For God so loved the world. How much did he love? He sent his son. And so if you've been taught to plug your name where it says the world, that's okay. God's a personal God. He loves you. But don't forget what it actually says. Jesus came to pay and purchase men from all nations throughout the world. And so half the story of the gospel is that he died. Half the story of the cross is that he is the propitiation for our sins. That word propitiation literally means that God's wrath was satisfied by taking our sin and our punishment and placing it on his son, and taking his son's righteousness and placing it on us. Never get over that fact. Never get over the fact that you are not getting what you deserve. But that's not the end of it. See, he's the propitiation for our sins, and not for ours only, but also for the sins of the world. The reason Jesus came to earth was to die on the cross. And the reason he died on the cross was to redeem all nations to himself. And so Jesus actually makes it pretty clear to his disciples, and his disciples is not just the 12, but it's that anyone who would claim to follow him, what our purpose is. God, he makes it clear. All 4 Gospels recorded. The first one, the Great Commission, Matthew 28. Go and make disciples of all nations. Sounds the same in Mark. Go into all the world and preach the good news to all creation. Luke, forgiveness of sins will be preached in his name to all nations. And John, as the Father has sent me, I am sending you. And let's not forget that none of us in this room deserve to be a part of this mission of reaching the nations. That it's all by grace, and that God's allowed us to join in with him in reaching the nations. That God chose each one of us. He says, I'm going to choose that guy, or I'm going to choose that girl, and give grace to them. But that grace, that responsibility, that grace doesn't stop with you. And so, if you guys ever have the question, well, isn't missions for like the super Christians or like the missions nerds? You know what I'm talking about? That's wrong, because Abraham says it best. Paul says it best in Galatians. And if you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's descendants, heirs according to the promise. Very simply put, that if you're in this room and you know Jesus, welcome to the family. And the family business is missions. That's just what we do. And it looks different for everybody, but that's what we do. Isaiah 49 puts it this way. He says, it is too small a thing for you to be my servant to restore the tribes of Jacob and bring back those of Israel. It is too small a thing for us to only reach the Citadel. It's too small a thing for us to only reach the Carolinas. It's too small a thing for us to only reach America. If that's your goal, that's awesome. It's just too small. Because he goes on to say, he says, I will also make you a light for the Gentiles, the nations, that you may bring salvation to the ends of the earth. So discipleship is God's means of reaching the nations. So that's awesome. If you guys are pumped up about doing discipleship in your small groups here on campus, But let's not forget God's purpose for our lives is that it's bigger than us, it's bigger than this room, and that whether we're stationed in another country or whether we're doing a job here in America, that our purpose is to reach the nations. And so what that looks like for us today is a place called the 1040 window. Some of you guys have probably heard of this. It's just 10 degrees north latitude to 40 degrees north latitude from West Africa to East Asia. 97% of the world's unreached people live in this box. Unreached simply means that they have little or absolutely no access to the gospel. There's no Bible in language, there's no church, there's no Christians in their community. The majority of 2.9 billion people that live here will be born, will live their entire lives, and will die, and never even meet a Christian to share the gospel with them. And so that's what we as a traveling team want to encourage you guys. Whether you're being stationed with the military or whether you guys are graduating and going off and doing a different job, we want you to consider giving a summer, a Christmas break, a year, or the rest of your lives to taking the gospel to the box. Because the need is great. Because Jesus died for them and he deserves their worship. But that's not the end of the story. It may look like that now, but we know what heaven looks like. We know the songs we're going to sing in heaven. Revelation 5, and they sing a new song. You are worthy, Jesus, to take the scroll and open its seals because you were slain. And with your blood you purchased men from God, from every tribe and language and people and nation. In heaven we're going to be singing some songs. And one of the songs, if not the main song we're going to be singing about, is the cross. That Jesus died for the nations. And if you had me pick one verse in the whole Bible to prove that God's heart beats for the world, for everybody, I wouldn't choose the Great Commission. I would choose this one. Because where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And 2 chapters later, we get to see the choir that'll sing these songs. And after this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and in front of the Lamb. Contrary to popular belief, heaven is not going to be a bunch of white people singing Chris Tomlin songs. It is going to be so much better than that. All the nations are going to be there. The nations are going to be singing about how God sent his son to die for the nations. And so as I end, I just want to ask you guys one question. What is the purpose? What is the trophy? What are you giving your lives to? Is it the same that God has planned for you? Or is it going to be a fake trophy? So I'm going to welcome up